Identity for Latin Americans changes over time, as do languages and social institutions. If identity does not submit to and accept changes of at least certain parts of itself, it will not function in an effective way. Like languages, identities encompass the changes of their context. Identity faces its redefinition in moments of transition when it goes from one place to another, when it's placed out of its original first place, when it's displaced. And this is where the issue of authenticity comes in place. Rather than being fixed to homogeneity, identity faces heterogeneity through its exposure to the identities of others. One of these moments of transition is precisely situations of coloniality. Imperial expansions, wars of conquest, and the subsequent colonial societies uncover places that seem to be, at first, places of transitions, like the islands that Christopher Columbus thought were the passage to the Indians. Over time, these places of transition becomes places in between, like in Nahuatl, it's called Nepantla, characterized by heterogeneity, where new orders become an evident and a new self, and I'm thinking the mestizos, because there was a racial mix as soon as the Spaniards arrived to what is today Central and South America. The colonial imperial self, and the colonial imperial self materializes. It is this colonial self, its others, their agencies, and the worlds they project and create that constitute one of the main topics of colonial Latin American studies and its focus on race, ethnicity, and Indians. I intend to go in two directions here. Excuse me, this is still too early. First, the homogenization of the Latin American Indian under Western eyes, and I think it's not only the Indian, it's the Latin American. We are the only ones who eat tacos are the Mexicans. In South America, we do not eat tacos. I must claim, though, that the piñata is not only a Mexican tradition, it's used in the whole Latin American continent. For example, no? This is just examples of how we are usually characterized by the Mexican features. And two, the necessity to recognize the current heterogeneity, the diversity among indigenous peoples of Latin America. 1492, Spanish America, constitutes then the birthplace of a new space of heterogeneity, a place that its ruling class, the European regime, insists to present as an homogeneous extension of Europe. This is what I call the illusion of homogeneity, necessary to comprehend the newness of the Amerindian others and install the oldness of the old world into the new world. And this is what supported the westernization of the lands that lay in the western side of the Atlantic. The illusion of homogeneity is evident in colonial documents that are being studied in the canonical list for the graduate exams in the academies of the First World, whose categorization of knowledge predominates as models of organizing the saberes, knowledges, in other academies as well. The illusion of homogeneity persists today with the use of certain metaphors held as descriptions of America, such a melting pot, with its implication of melting differences into one unique American identity. Inexplicable otherness becomes part of the salad bowl with connotations, as Hamid Nafisai states when he talks about benign pluralism. The colonial illusion of homogenization becomes in the late 20th century in the politics of homogenization of First World academies. As Nafisai states in his article Consuming the Other, quote, in the late 1980s, in the early 1990s, major corporate establishments, academic and business, particularly in North America, fell into a steady paroxysm of interest in otherness and in institutionalization of diversity, pluralism, and multiculturalism. Like all high fevers, these two will break quickly. End of quotation. The problem that Nafisai stresses here is the negation of difference and the celebration of a putative equality. This negation of difference is what moves the 15th century colonizers in the New World. They are unable to acknowledge that any other tends to thrive on the ambiguities and the limits of the language. Remember Columbus' letters when he tries unsuccessfully to describe animals, plants, peoples, and technologies that he has never seen before. The space of the other is an unknown space. Colonial minds, those that seek the illusion of homogeneity, state that the space of the other is the space of disorder. We could say, following Father Joseph de Acosta, when he tries to explain the Mexican and Inca systems of communication, that Inca quipus and Mexican codex are simply another technology of communication, another form of order filled with possibilities. He's exploring alternative writing systems that are different from the alphabetic script. Father Acosta makes this remark when he's trying to demonstrate that the Indians do have intelligence. And one of his points is precisely the development of tangible systems of communication, meaning that they can be perceived by any of the senses, that the Europeans could not understand in past centuries. This is Father Joseph de Acosta speaking in 1590. In 1997, Jared Diamond, I'm sure you are familiar with his bestseller, expresses an opinion similar to the Europeans that Acosta is trying to correct. In his book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, Diamond asks, after examining the origins of alphabetic writing more than 5,000 years ago, why couldn't the Incas read and write? To develop a writing system independently is an extremely complex process, Diamond says. He concludes, though, that the Incas, without writing, had only vocal knowledge transmitted by oral memory, and that they were unsophisticated and naive compared with the Spaniards. This would also explain, in Diamond's reasoning, along with other technologies and natural disasters, why the Spaniards were able to conquer the Inca Empire apparently so easily and not the other way around. And this is precisely what I am asking my current undergraduate students to look at carefully and not to accept without a discussion. Diamond's observation reinforces the stereotyped vision of the easy fall of the Incas and Aztecs without much resistance. Likewise, this author associates the lack of alphabetic script to the lack of an effective means of communication. What do we do with these kind of sources that come to our students? Our task as scholars and teachers is to juggle precisely between the colonial illusion of homogenization that founds the canon of Latin American letters and the celebration of difference. In this act of juggling, we even dare to go further. We intend to reflect about the colonial discourses as objects of study and also as instances that become a subject, an agent of domination and colonization that may be found many times camouflaged in current academic bodies of knowledge. It is evident that our view of colonialities is dominated by our place of enunciation, which is usually Western and Eurocentric. After all, many of us have English or Spanish as our native language. We also wonder how the scholars of coloniality look at, read, think about, and explain the Indians in Spanish-American places and social networks from privileged theoretical frames such as postmodernism, postcolonial, and subaltern studies.